Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach. I'm here with yet another high demand coach, and that is John Cottrell. He specializes in executive leadership coaching and helps successful leaders to obtain what money cannot buy. Things like renewed confidence, killing off imposter syndrome once and for all, or simply giving them the gift of being happy again. John leans on a wide variety of principles and methodologies, which all come together to generate transformational results through driven action. Now, with over 11 years of experience within coaching, he's experienced in his craft, and his proven coaching techniques have seen him amass a long list of accolades and references. And I can attest to that. I looked up John Cottrell on a Google search before we started, and it was just award after award after award after award. So a very decorated career, a wide range of techniques. I'm really interested in diving in on that. But first off, I just want to say welcome to the show, John. I'm excited to have you here. And before we get into all of that and how you help your clients, I'd love to hear, what were you doing before coaching, and how did that ultimately lead you to make the leap?
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and it's great to be here. I was running a consultancy firm with some friends, helping transform larger businesses, predominantly focused on their productivity. And one day, the client said, and we were in Eastern Europe at the time, in Slovakia, and the client said, "Oh, we really like your coaching." And at the time, I said to him, "Well, what do you mean?" Because I thought we were being smart consultants by getting the clients to do the work. And they said, "Well, we really like the fact that you sit with our people, they learn, and they get to do the stuff themselves, and then they can do it without you. And you seem very happy to let them take the credit for what you've taught them, which goes down even better." And that particular business, I think it turned over the equivalent. I mean, they weren't in the euro back in those days, but it's about €100 million business. So it wasn't a small business by conventional standards. It was doing a little better than break even. And I think we took it to €24 million of profit on about the same turnover. So there was a lot of hidden potential in that business. And that was the first time a client had used the word coaching to me. And that's what, if you like, lit the fuse for what happened next.
Yeah. Fascinating. And so there's a handful of words that some folks use really specifically, some folks use a little bit more loosely, but as you're kind of making this shift from a consultancy to coaching, what was the difference in those two words for your experience?
Yeah, so a lot of consultancy firms sell days, and we didn't. We sold the result. So we had a subsistence fee, which the clients all realized, they're not stupid people. They realized that pays our mortgages and pays for our airfares. But at the end of the project, if we didn't deliver the result, we'd have nothing to show for maybe 2 years worth of work. So we were on the hook with them for the result they wanted to achieve. And sometimes we really struggled to get a result if we couldn't engage the client properly, too much of them being stuck in their own comfort zones. And other times we blew the result completely out of the water. One client didn't actually have enough money in his budget to pay us until the following year. So you get all kinds of stuff. So that's the consulting game. The coaching game is much more bite-sized insight. So you're working with the client far less intensively. And again, that was another client insight when I was at a client's office and he was ranting down the phone at somebody. And we're all thinking, oh, we might be next for whatever's coming from this guy that's not in a very good mood. And he goes, "Oh, that was the other mob." And I said, "What other mob?" He goes, "Oh, they're terrible. Whenever they're here, I have to spend all my time with them and I can't get my job done." And we're like, "Oh." And he said, "Whereas you guys, you get in and you get stuff going and you leave me alone. It's fantastic." We thought, oh, that's interesting. So, if you listen, the clients are telling you what they want. And what he wanted was, "I've got my own job to do. I can't have you justifying yourselves by stealing my time." And coaching is brilliant at being that little bite-sized bit of insight they need on a weekly or a fortnightly basis, and then get on with the rest of what they want to do. And that's how I saw it when I was coming into the coaching game.
Fantastic. What would you say today, now that you're coaching and have been doing it for a long time now, What would you say is the most important work you do for your clients today?
What I call emotional resolution.
Mm.
So what that is if you go back to the work of Abraham Maslow, and when Maslow first did his research, um, he reckoned that he couldn't find enough self-actualized people to study. They
Wow.
just didn't exist. So most adult humans are unresolved people. They are people who really can only take care of their own needs. They don't really see or understand the needs of others. And one of the big box ticks about being a resolved person is your ability to see and understand the needs of another human being.
Wow.
And so that one step changes everything for somebody. And if they're running a business, it changes everything for all the people they employ and all the people that they have relationships with, their children, their spouse, their parents, wider family, changes everything.
Yeah. And as I was kind of researching what you do, I noticed that you do spend a lot of time working on what I would call the whole person, right? It's not just the kind of business coaching, I'm going to help you double your profits kind of thing. There was a lot of techniques that you had in there that included therapy, which many coaches I know wouldn't touch with a 1,000-foot pole, right? So tell me a little bit about how you've navigated this world of coaching, one-on-one coaching, team coaching, and therapy, and how you bring those two modalities together.
Yeah, so I try not to use the word coach actually, because people say, "Oh, you're a business coach." I'd say, "Well, no, I'm not. I used to be, but I'm not doing that anymore." But I'm also not a therapist in the sense of being, say, a qualified psychotherapist. What I do is based on largely timeline therapy, which was developed by Wyatt Wood Small and the guy that passed away last year. Where's his book? Is up here somewhere. Tad James. And I would say it was discovered by a series of experiments that were done, I think, in California in the United States. And that was about 35 years ago.
Mm.
And then there's a but. And the but is that most of that world is focused on training people to train people. So the people are earning their money by training others. They're not really earning their money by working with the people. And I decided I didn't want to be a trainer and repeat the same stuff every week. What I wanted to do was work with people. So my focus became breakthrough.
Mm.
And then I looked at what other bodies of knowledge I needed to access to feed into that process to make it more effective. And I've not been afraid of going to sign up with people to get a deeper level of training. I've done that with somebody who was directly connected with Tad James, a very good trainer, but I was able to see and compare how he does things with some of my innovations and why some of what he does is really good and where in other places I'm significantly better because I've changed the method based on my experience of working with people to make it more effective.
Yeah. How have you found the kind of hard charging executive that you tend to work with? How did they kind of ease into or like slam into those types of modalities? Does it tend to be hard work to get them to recognize how it all comes together, or does it tend to flow well?
Yeah, so I don't tend to tell the client what I'm doing. So what I say to them is this: the brighter you are, the harder you're likely to fight me. So I'm deliberately vague because I need to help you, not fight you. And if you're okay with that, then we're good to go. So I'm literally trying to keep their ego, their chimp, if you like, quiet while I go in round the back and sort it out without the chimp knowing. It's that kind of thing. But for most men in particular, getting emotional is the last thing they want because they see it as a sign of weakness. Society expects men to be, the strong, silent type. But actually that causes a huge amount of problems. And for those guys prepared to sort of step over the threshold and let go of their emotions, their worlds change. I did one recently, a guy in the finance world whose friends and business associates have all noticed that he's happier and he's lost weight. So they're all asking him about his weight loss, but he hasn't really gone into the depth of what he's done. He just said, well, I'm feeling good. I don't need to drink. I'm fine. But actually under the surface, he let go of a ton of stuff. And most of that, the root of it was bullying at school. And the number of 40 and 50-year-olds still carrying the scars from their school days is phenomenal. And of course, that wasn't anything he did wrong. It was something that happened to him. And this is Oprah's book with Dr. Steve Perry. It's actually called What Happened to You? And that's the key question. It's not what's wrong with you. It's actually what happened to you is the issue.
Wow.
So that's what I get into with my clients is what happened to you. Let's help you release that. And then as you become resolved through letting go of those unmet basic needs, that's what Maslow would recognize, that you start to move up in terms of your own level of personal development and consciousness. You see more how the world works. And that allows you to become more effective, whether you're a business owner, an executive, a coach, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So you've touched on a big issue that a lot of men in the business world fight with, is getting to that emotional place. What would you say is one of the big challenges for female executives and leaders?
Oh, okay. That's a really interesting question, because I would say, as a general rule, I know we're generalizing here. As a general rule, women take to the work much more easily than men. Particularly if it's a husband and wife team, the wife will get it and will be encouraging the husband. That's quite common. And then I get one funny instance was a man said to me, well, I've got no idea. He said, it doesn't really feel any different to me. Fortunately for me, his wife was standing next to him. And she goes, what do you mean it's not different? And went on a rant about the fact that homework was getting done. There was no shouting at home. Things were nice and peaceful. He was helping out with the kids and the housework. So all this stuff had changed. And he was like, well, it's just the same as it ever was. So that was quite funny that he was still sort of in denial, having let go and accessed a more peaceful life. His family and his kids knew, but he was like, no, I'm just the same. And I think the reason he was doing that was because he wanted to keep his distance from his own past. He had a terrible past, nothing to do with him or that he'd done anything wrong. But some people, if they have to notice the difference, they have to acknowledge that past. And that's the last thing they want to do. Yeah. So it is understandable, but it still allows us to, smile about it.
Yeah. Another topic that it seems you spend a lot of time working with folks on is imposter syndrome. And yeah, I think to a lot of folks who are not...
Now that's maybe a more female one, Scott.
Okay. Yes. And that's where I was going with that. And it seems like no one's exempt from imposter syndrome. I think it shows up all over the place. But what I've found is that particularly female entrepreneurs, especially, it's not even especially, but just throughout their careers, there's that constant outside in, right? And so what is it that causes that? And how can folks overcome it?
Okay. So this goes right back to girls and boys at school. So I don't know what's in the US, but certainly in the UK, girls are being seen to be doing better at school than boys. Yeah. And there's this need that they seem to have to want to do well, to get it right and all of that. Now, whether that's a societal thing or a genetic thing, I couldn't tell you. But what comes out in behavior is a series of limiting beliefs. It might not be, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. All kinds of things like that. And now I think society puts more on women in many ways. So we have to unpack that to enable that woman to release it. And then once they're releasing it, and I've worked with one, I forget how many degrees she had, but I think it was at least 3 graduate degrees. Wow. And still believed that she wasn't good enough. And everybody else thought she was amazing. And yet there's these deep rooted things from childhood that she was building on top of rather than releasing from underneath. And we had to go in and release that. They were her to become who she really was. Because when you're running imposter syndrome, you're almost denying yourself. And it's really important for people to understand that you need to have that healthy relationship with yourself. And when you actually embrace who you really are and how good you really are, again, everything changes.
Yeah, and I would say, even one of the traps that folks can get themselves into with imposter syndrome is it's not worth me fixing this because I've got other people to take care of, right? And the reality of it is, I mean, this, the reality of it is that the more you take care of yourself, the more capable you are of taking care of others, which I think brings us back to that point you were making at the beginning of, and I love the way you said it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that most adults out there cannot see and understand the needs of another human being because they've not resolved their own emotional makeup themselves. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And terrible, isn't it?
It's scary. But again, the impact of that, right? If you want to take care of others, which for many executives, despite the kind of hard charging stereotype is so true, right? There's so many executives out there who want to take care of their team, who want to take care of their family. And I think you've really, really tapped into something remarkable on how to create that kind of breakthrough. Now, there's a question I want to ask, maybe kind of put a bow on all of this. And it's a question I like to ask all my guests. And it's this: what is the biggest secret that you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing that you wish everybody listening today knew?
It's that emotion is the cause of everything. So just to expand a little bit, what happens in a threat situation of any kind is our unconscious acts primarily to protect us. It then suppresses that emotion and keeps it physically in the body for resolution when it gets safer. And the problem is it never gets safer. So it's acting on us, on our belief systems and on our physical health when we're completely unaware of it. Wow. And very often we find that we took a decision as a small child that still acts on us as a mature adult, and yet we have no idea of the decision that the child took. I've taken so many people back. I'll give you an example. An accountant running a nice little business, but would never implement anything with her team. And I got the idea that what it was she wasn't speaking up. So the reason they weren't doing what she wanted was because she wasn't actually telling them. So then I thought, well, why are you not speaking up? The only reason why you wouldn't is if you were scared to. Would that be the logical thing? Okay, why would I be scared to? Well, probably because someone shouted at me when I did earlier in my life. So I said to her, how was life at home? How were mum and dad? She said, mum and dad were loving. I had a really amazing childhood. I went, okay, how about figures of authority? How about school teachers? She was just about to go, well, that was all. And then she went, oh, there was this physics teacher. I said, oh, tell me about him. He was awful. He used to shout at people. He used to throw things. He used to hit people. And then I said, well, what did you learn from him? She said, keep my bloody mouth shut. I went, oh. And then the lips went, in Charlie Brown cartoons when they all go all wobbly like this, yeah? She was doing that, and she goes, oh, and being an accountant, she goes, oh, I feel really emotional. I said, okay. And she goes, are you telling me that's it? I said, well, you tell me. But that's what it was. So from 11 to early 50s, call it 51, that's 40 years of keeping quiet because a teacher frightened her when she was a little girl.
Wow.
And there's no way you can blame the 11-year-old for that, right? That was a sensible decision to avoid having something thrown at her or being clobbered or shouted at. But it was still working 40 years later. And there's loads of stories like that.
Wow. Wow. Stunning. Yeah, there's so much in there, and what a great story to pull it all together. I want to shift gears kind of one final time, and then we'll make sure we share how folks can get in touch with you. But I'm gonna actually have you take off your coach hat, your therapist hat, your fill in the blank breakthrough hat for a moment. put on your CEO hat
on.
and talk to us a little bit about what the next stage of growth looks like for you and your business and what challenges you might have to overcome to get there.
Yeah, so I'm driven by a vision. So I have a vision for my 80th birthday and creating a more resolved world. That's what I want to achieve. I want to achieve a world where we don't talk about mental health problems because we realize it's not mental. It's not something people have got wrong in their heads. It's not a health problem needing medicine, just emotion. There's really simple strategies we can implement to get rid of it. And the more people we resolve, the better societies we're going to have, which are going to in turn take better care of the environment and the planet we all live on. So for me, if I'm looking at what role I can play, that's what's driving me. That's my big picture of what I see the future.
That's awesome. Remarkable. What a future that would be. So John, before I let you go here, I know that some folks are listening and they're resonating with, I mean, there's so many points that you've made along the way. So how can folks find more out about your work or how to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my website is breakthroughleadership.co.uk. I think I'm fairly easy to find on LinkedIn. Obviously, we're connected, I think, Scott. So that's an easy second connection. Probably those are the two easiest ways.
Fantastic.
And my email address is john@breakthroughleadership.co.uk rather than .com.
Excellent. Well, John, it was just an absolute pleasure having you on. I so appreciate both what you do and you taking the time to be here with us today. And for those of you listening, your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did. And I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.